So, hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. Welcome. We're really glad you've taken the time to be here. I'm Amanda Gay, Marketing Manager here at Planet. So, before we get started, I want to let you know that we are recording this webinar and we will be sharing it with everyone who registered shortly after the webinar. Please feel free to share it with anyone on your team. I'll speak for just a minute and then I will hand you over to Christopher Monclier, our Senior Software Specialist. We will be pausing at the end of our presentation to answer your questions. Your cameras and mics are turned off, so please feel free to type your questions into the chat so that I can read them out to Christopher. If there are any questions that we're not able to get to during this session, we will make sure to follow up with you online after the presentation. So I will hand you over to Christopher now so he can take you through creating part and panel labels using the Cabinet Vision Label Edition. Christopher, over to you.
Thank you, Amanda. Thank you. Hi, everyone. So I'm Christopher, Senior Software Specialist at Planet Canada. So today we'll spend an hour or so going over the label add-on in Cabinet Vision. Basically, this is an addition that will allow you to create different type of labels for your parts and apply them to your part once the part get off the machines. So what we'll do, we'll go over each method of labeling, just explain basically the workflow on how to apply those labels, and then we'll dig in Cabinet Vision to see how to create those labels and then select them to a specific machine and then send them to the workflow at the same time you send your job to the shop. So I will go over my next slide. So basically, when you do labeling in Cabinet Vision, you have two different solutions. So you can do labeling basically on demand, which means that you will apply the label manually. For example, when you upload the part of the table of a nesting machine or a beam saw, and then the operator manually apply the label. Or you have an automatic solution where if the machine is capable of printing and placing the label itself, Cabinet Vision basically will send all the information to the machine in order to add those labels in real time as the part get cut on the CNC machines. So let's talk first about the real-time labeling, just to first explain what's going on when you want to do real-time labeling and how Cabinet Vision can help you. So basically, most of the time that will be done on a nesting machine, so a flat nesting machine or a beam saw. The first requirement, of course, will be to make sure that the machine is capable of doing it. And you will know for sure once you buy the equipment. They will tell you it has an onboard printer and can put a label automatically on the part. The picture you see on the right is basically just kind of an example of a CNC machine with an onboard printer with an arm that will basically put the label on the part. So basically there's two things that will be done. First, the machine will print the labels. The label will come off basically the little slot you see right here. And once it's done, this arm basically will grab the label and paste it basically on the panel for you wherever you need labels. So most of the time this is done before doing the labeling. So before doing, the cutting. So you will basically first load the panel. The machine will print the labels and then push it on the table and start cutting the parts and then offload, and all the parts will be already labeled. So this require images. So Cabinet Vision will basically print the images for you. What will happen is Cabinet Vision will generate one image for one part. And also in the CNC file, the label information will be added as well in the CNC file. Which means that this is done directly from Cabinet Vision. We basically override the original output where we add basically in this CNC file all the labels for each panel with the position, the half of the label image, and then the machine, knowing that it has to print label, will basically look at the CNC file and knows that it needs to put label in specific spot on your panels here. The next thing is, if we will go in on the next slide, so let's move to the next one. So this is basically kind of like an example of how the process works with a small video to give you basically an idea when the label get printed on the machine. So it's really like the same for most machine. It will look different, but it's really the same process. You have a printer directly on the loading table. This is linked basically to also the arms, like the clamp you have that will grab the panel. So this could move back and forth on the X and Y axis. So it could move on the left to right or front to back, and then put the label where you need it on the panel. If we were to play it, so you will see basically what's going on. So the machine print the label first, and then will get the arm to grab the label. And once it grabs the label, it will basically put it down on the panel for you. So this is really like the real-time labeling, meaning that the operator has no things to put manually. They just have to load the program. And while the machine will start loading the panel, it will print and paste the label on the parts. This is done prior to pushing the panel. So once all the label I printed, you will see that now the machine will grab the panel and continue loading it on the actual spoil board for you. So that's the real-time labeling solution. This solution is part of the Plus Label edition. So every time you purchase Plus labels, or you already have it, you can create those labels to any CNC machine you have in your shop that's capable of printing parts automatically. So if you have a nesting machine, a beam saw, this way, if they can print their own labels, so you can implement this solution with cabinet vision here. The next thing is, if you don't have this system on your CNC machine, keep in mind it will mostly be installed while you first purchase the machine, but I saw a couple of machines where they basically added this solution after. So it could be installed after, but you will have to reach out to the machinery dealer to see if it's possible for your particular CNC machine. But most of the time, this is something that's really like coming with the machine. So you know, as soon as you buy the machine, you need basically to also send information for real-time labeling, and then we do it from the label edition for you. So if you don't have the solution, and if you cannot get to this automated solution, so you will do what we call on-demand labeling. So on-demand labeling is basically done by hand by the operator as it will offload the part of the machine. So what you see on the picture on the right is basically it's a computer with a printer attached to it. And you have basically the label app installed on the computer. Cabvision will send the label information to this computer, and the operator will open the job that is currently cutting on the CNC, and he can go basically from one sheet to another one, and basically will touch the part, and by touching the part, he will decide to print the label for the part. You can print all the label at once for one sheet if you prefer, or you can do it basically one part at a time. So this is just an option in the label app. I will show you later how to toggle between one label versus printing all the labels in one click in the label app. But this is the on-demand labeling. So this solution is most of the time, if not all the time, done on the offloading table. So if you have an offloading table, or sometimes it could be done directly on the spoil board. So if you don't have a offloading table, you just leave the part on the machine bed. You have your app basically open, and the operator look at the pattern in front of him, and from the pattern, he will know where to put each label on each part. The benefit of this one is really that you can print the label whenever you want. It's not uncommon. I saw some customer who implemented both solutions. So they implemented the automatic labels, and they also added this extra printer at the end just in case they want to print the label again if it's damaged, or if, for example, this is something that they want to recut or redo later on, so they want to print the label one more time. So you can do both if you want, but you will just have to make sure in Cabvision you output both label files for both the machine and the label app as well. Okay. So once you do that, so if you want to see a couple examples, so this is an actual example I implemented for customers, just to show you what it could look like. So basically, the software is the Label It app. So this is like the old Label It app. Now the user interface changed a little bit. So the one I will show you today is the newer one, but it's pretty much the same functionality. The Label app is installed on the Microsoft Surface tablet. So that was mainly to try to save some space, not having to have a full like desktop with all the like tower hardware and all that. So you can simply get a Microsoft Surface tablet and install the Label app, and then connect a printer to the tablet. So this printer, this is one of the brand we use often. It's the Zebra ZT230. This is basically a label printer. This is a great printer to print labels, and this is one I would recommend. It's not the cheapest one, but it's really one that's proven to work well in woodworking shops. So that's one of the model you could use if you are interested in labeling with the Label app here. Another view, which is another customer, which is kind of a similar solution. The difference is here we just basically, instead of having the tablet installed on a kind of like a support, a metal support, we just build basically a little like a table on the side, put the app on the tablet, and then put the printer right next to the offloading table. And what I like with this solution is, being a tablet, we can rotate basically the screen, and we just rotate it in a way that it will basically be in the same orientation as the actual panel that get offloaded. And in the Label app, you have the option to rotate this screen. So if you want to have it more like landscape or portrait, so this is just in the Label app, you can toggle. And here it's allowed the operator to easily see where each part is going on the panel is offloading here. So also it's the same kind of a similar model of Microsoft Surface tablet, and still a Zebra printer as well here. Now I want just to touch base on some tips for you once you implement labeling, and this is valid for automatic or on-demand labeling. It's more like we have quite the same question that come often, and just want to touch on those. So first, for the printer, we often hear being asked, so what model of printer we should use. As I mentioned before, I usually recommend the Zebra models because they are industrial label printer. So they are dust resistant, so they are really like going to last much longer than an office printer, like an office label printer. So sometimes it's better to spend the extra money just to make sure that the printer will last as long as possible. Those printers also, the Zebra, will have different type of way to print the label. So you can have a thermal printing with basically the ink be on a roll or with no ink. So it's just different model of labels and different model of printer doing different things. Also, for the printers, when you look at the printer, so they will have some specs about the resolution, the DPI. So this number, basically, the higher it is, the DPI number, the higher it is, the better quality you will have to print those labels. So it doesn't mean that you want to print like an actual photography or like a picture like of something that's really like high resolution. But keep in mind, if you planning to implement barcodes, So those barcodes, because there's a lot of lines, different spacing, and sometimes there's not much space between the line. When you have a high DPI printer, the resolution get better, so it's easier basically at the end to read the barcode when you use the scanner. I saw some customer, they will buy some cheap printer with like low resolution, and it takes a while where you have to move back and forth with the barcode scanner to catch the barcode. So that's one thing you want to make sure to look at when you look at the specs of a printer. Next thing is the network connectivity. So basically, it's depend on how you implement. It's mostly for on-demand labeling when you have like the workstation and the printer. It's just to think with your IT guy how you will basically communicate with the workstation where we install the app and also the printer. Sometimes having a printer that could connect directly to the network make it easier to not have to directly find a way to plug a cord between the printer and the tablet or the computer. Because the thing is, you don't want to have a bunch of wire in the shop, like going left, right. So some printer will have wireless connectivity. Some printer will have network, like actual like network connectivity with hardwired. So just look into that to make sure that whatever you're planning to implement, they will both be able to talk to each other. And what I like now with the newest version of Cabvision, it's because now we have the option to all those licenses to be keyless. Before in the past, when we had the USB key for like a label workstation, if we use a tablet, we needed to plug a dongle on the tablet. So it was quite complicated, but now with just a keyless code, it's easy to activate the license on the tablet, and you don't have to have any USB key connected to the tablet. So, and if the printer is wireless or connected to your actual network, you would just have the tablet plug basically on the power supply, and then that's it. And everything is done wirelessly. And you can drop your job remotely from the office into the tablet to be able to load them on the tablet when you want to print the label. Next point is one regarding the glue. So when you want to put the label on the part, most often I heard a lot of people saying they didn't want to use label because it's too much work to remove them and clean basically the labels of the part. So now it's fairly easy to actually find like a specific grade of labels that will be easy to peel on part and will not leave almost like no glue at all. So just make sure when you buy those labels or reach out to those company making labels to tell them that you want a removable glue. Or there's one called removable, or one called ultra removable. So basically, you can even have one that's easy to peel, but sometimes it's even too easy to peel, so it's sometimes fall off itself. So just being able to remove it easily, it's a thing that you have to make sure you ask when you buy those roll of labels to make sure that you're not stuck with thousands of labels and then the guys on site spend like half an hour trying to clean the labels of the parts, specifically if it's MDF, sometime when you need to do some finishing on the MDF. So make sure you use the right glue. And on that, there's some companies in Canada. I'm not like recommending any specific one, but you can search online and find some companies specialized in labels. There's one called Canada Labels, which has those special labels like that woodworking shops use a lot. We recommend them, and it's been great. We never had any complaint for those labels that they provide to the woodworking shops here. Okay. So this is the basic on the on-demand and real-time labeling. So now what I want to touch on is basically how to design labels in Cabvision, just to show you basically step-by-step in Cabvision how you create a label and assign a label to a specific machine in the software. So when you have the label edition, no matter what, if you want to do real-time labeling or on-demand labeling, you still use the same label administrator to design your labels and also to be able to send the labels to the machines once you want to send to production. So what you'll do, we'll now switch to Cablevision. So let's see how we can do that. Right here. Here you go. So to be able to customize, like create, modify a label, you need to be in the S2M center. So in the S2M center from Cablevision, so you need to open a job. You cannot do it from the main menu. You have to at least be inside a job. And once you are in a job, you go to the S2M center tab. So when you are in the S2M Center tab, when you have the label edition, so a couple of things will be added to your S2M Center. So the first thing is the Utilities tab in the S2M Center will allow you to see a setup button, a label setup button. And this is what will open the label administrator. The label administrator has two tabs, one called Jobs and one called Design. So jobs is the tab where you will see the job you actually sent to the on-demand label app. So when you send a job to the label app to be printed on demand in the shop, that will be listed here. And basically this tab allows you to even remove the job remotely. So let's say you have a shared drive and you don't want to make a mistake or you don't want it to be available anymore because it's done. You can just check the job you want to remove, and then you click on the remove select job button. So that's what that will allow you to do. And also it allows you to see if a job has been completed or not. So when you will switch to the label app later, you will see that there's an option in the label app for the operator in the shop to check a job and mark it as completed. And the nice thing about it is you in the office, like let's say you are the engineer, like sending the job to the shop. So you could open your label administrator and know, okay, finished printed all the label, it mark it as completed. So I assume that now the CNC machining is all done for this particular job you sent to the shop floor here. So that's what you can do here. The other thing you can do with the label administrator, and that's really like the main thing you will do, is to design labels. So the design tab is really where you can create different template of labels. So when you first install Cablevision, there will already be several template of labels, different size and different layout. So you can just go over the one that you'll find in your software. You can even copy those labels just by clicking on the copy button, or you can create a new one, blank label with a new name and a new size as well. So no matter what you do, that you copy or start a new one, you will always go over the same step then to design the label. So let's say, for example, I wanted to start a new one. So I just click the new button. I have to pick a name. So I'll just leave a simple name, click OK. And usually the first thing I will do when I design a new label is to change my size. So I will basically input here the width and the height of my actual label I'm going to print. So in this case, let's do 4 by 2, for example. So as soon as you change, you go to the next field, it will update basically the window with the preview of the label. So now it's blank, so there's nothing on the label. So when you want to add the field, it's fairly easy. You just click on the add button. And as soon as you click on the add button, you will have basically a drop down list of all the available fields you can add on the label. And all those fields are linked to some data and information within your job file. Easy thing to do, for example, let's say you wanted to put the part name. So you will go down and go find a field called part name. So they are grouped by type. So all the part field will be in part, and then you have room, you have CNC, edge, and so on and so on. So part will mostly hold all the part information. So if I select my part name, I click OK. And now I can see my new field added on my label. So this will basically always write the part name for you in this field. What you can do, you can simply click drag and drop directly on the label to move the field, or you can use the X, Y position to move it as well if you want to be much more accurate and line up things as well. You can change the width of the field, or you can change the height of the field. The height mostly is more like the font size. They call it height, but it will really like also change the font size. So if I wanted to put 1 inch here, you'll see that my field will increase. And if I go, I can rotate the field. And if I make it a little bit wider, that will also increase basically to fill the whole field here. So by changing the width and the height, that will basically control how much space you have and to basically fit the specific font you're trying to print on the label here. So also, I didn't say, but of course, you will want to make sure that you set your default unit in the label administrator. And this unit you set here is different than the unit you set in your actual CAD region. So once you select inches here, that will mean that the label, first you will design the label in Imperial, but also when you will send the label to the shop, those dimension sizes will be printed in inches as well. So that's just here, you change which unit you want to send to the shop floor as well as designing the label as well here. And of course, you can format the label and make it bold if you want change, if you want align left, right, or center. So really easy. So when we add the field, as I said, we can even move the XY position manually by drag and dropping, or just type the position in the field. So here I added the part name. If I want to add now the size, I will go the part, and in the part I will have different options for the size. So I can say I just want the width and the length. I can have the width, the length, and the thickness. I can swap the length first, then the width and the thickness. Or you can go just one field at a time. So you can say just put the length, the width, and the thickness on their own. This will be basically if you wanted to put them in separate field, and then you can move them around on your label here. So if I want to have width, length, usually I would go with length and thickness. Click OK. So now you can see the field being added. The image of the part is a field called part image, or part graphic, sorry. Wait. Yeah, part graphic. And when you add the part graphic field, so by default in the label app, because we don't know yet what part you're going to print, it will always show basically a X, which is basically to kind of like a placeholder of where it's going to print the image of the part. So of course, because it's an image, just make it big enough so you can see it on your label. So let's something a little bit better here. Here, so I'm not going to do the best design, but just to show you an example, I will center my image. Sometimes I put the size just over the image of the part right here. And maybe make this a little bit smaller, center. And now I can drag and drop this right here. When you select the part graphic, the image of the part, you can also change the band symbol size. So basically when you have the edge band on the part with the little like circle telling you where to edge bend, if it's too small, you can increase, or if it's too big, you can decrease the size here. So just simply play, experience it once you print a label and see if it's the right size for you based on the size of your label as well. Here. So this is how you add the image of a part, and this is how you add the size of the part right here. Another thing you can do with the label app, you can add barcode. So when you want to add a barcode, basically a barcode is really like a font in CAD Vision. So if I select in my CNC field, my secondary program name. So let's say sometime a part you need to send it to secondary operation. So let's say there's a flip operation and you do it on a different machine, and you want to add a barcode for the operator to just scan and load the program directly. So you select basically the field called secondary program name. And once you select this field, you change the font, and a barcode, most of the time we'll use the 3 of 9 barcode font. So this is really common. And this one, you just have to check with the CNC machine tech. It will tell you what font the barcode reader is capable of reading. So it will tell you this is a 3 of 9. So you just select a 3 of 9 font. And now we basically converted the actual text we had previously. So if I go back to this text, which is the program name, we converted it to 3 of 9 barcode right here. And as I said, any field with text could be basically converted to a barcode in the label editor here. So one really common one is the CNC secondary program name. Another one, let's say you have dowel machine. Let's say the dowel machine, you need dowel on the left, on the right, on the top, and on the bottom. So when it's dowel, it's a little bit more tricky because sometimes dowel could be basically different from one edge to another one. So in the add button, all the dowel program names will be under the edge group. So this is a group called edge. And edge basically will hold all the edge program. And a dowel basically is a program on the edge of the part. So when you want to have a barcode on the left side of the part, you just select, for example, edge left barcode, edge left barcode, you click OK. And this is the name of the program on the left of the part. And then you will change this for a 3 of 9 font right here, barcode. You can also rotate the barcode if you wanted to. So you can make it like vertical or horizontal. So sometimes I saw some company where they put the barcode on the side of the actual part. So let's move that one for now. So we'll just put a barcode here, for example, centered. So when you center, it will show off, but when you actually print it, it will be exactly centered on this field here. So don't worry if you see it like off for now. It will reposition itself when you print it. So this one is the left edge of the part, and you can do a barcode right. So edge, right, barcode, click OK. Rotate 270, go 3 of 9. Change the and then if I need it, I will put it on the right here. So this is a way to do it when you want to see the part basically with a barcode on the left, on the right. This is not the only way. Sometimes you have some labels where all the barcodes will be listed just on the one on top of each other. And then you can put a symbol to tell you with an arrow on what edge it's going. So there's a field right here in edge right here. This is bottom orientation symbol, or each basically edge you can have a left orientation symbol. And what it will look like, it's similar to, I believe, this one here, where you will have basically a symbol that will appear to tell you this barcode when you look at the part on what side this should go. So it will show you, the arrow sometimes will rotate depending on the actual part itself. So this is just a sample you see, but the actual orientation will point an arrow on the left, on the right, on the top, on the bottom to tell you which edge this program should be loaded here. So that's another way to do it as well too here. Okay. So this is the method to add barcode. Also, one thing you can do, so I will invite you to explore all the fields you will find in the text, automatic text you see in the drop-down list here. because there might be some field that you may find useful for your own shop. So it's good to go over all those fields. Workflow, for example, Sensi workflow is one that will kind of like give you a short code that will tell you what is the workflow of the part. So it will, for example, tell you this part goes to the nest, then go to the tower, and then it's done. Or sometimes this part has to go to the nesting, then the point to point, and then it's done. So basically, it will use the machine tag. So in the machine catalog, you can have a machine tag here. So you can put a short code for your machine, and each machine will have a tag in the workflow field. So you will put, for example, let's say it's going to the nesting machine, then the point to point machine. And I'll make sure that my point to point has a different name, PTP. So what will happen is on your label, you will see in workflow something def, then an arrow going to P2P. So it will tell you once you are done with this part on the nesting machine, give it to the guy to the point-to-point machine. So it's kind of like an easy way to know where this part has to go next here. So that's a field that you can use. Also, the label editor also has some extra field. So if I go in the help file, you can access. So it's more like automatic text designing label right here. So if you want to explore even more available fields, so you can write auto text also the same way you will write some automatic text when you do your CAD drawings. So this is basically the list of available fields that you can add on top of the one that you already have in basically the list of fields we discussed previously. So those are added sometime at each update. There's a couple of new fields added, so it might be good to explore because, for example, between version 2021 and version 2022, there's a couple of additional fields that was added to this list. So again, for example, someone wanted to have a unique part ID. So now there's a code here. If you write this in your text field, so for example, you copy this field, then you go back to your label setup window, and let's get our sample code and add. And this time you'll just select the type text, and in text you basically in the field sample text you just paste the code right here, and this will replace this code with the actual part ID on your label here. So I know some from like MES or ERP software, sometimes they want to track things. So you could even stack multiple code. So if we go back here, for example, let's say you wanted to have the job name or the job ID, for example. So you want to create a unique ID. So you want it to be the job ID plus the part ID. So you just put one next to each other, and you can still write something between if you wanted to. So if you wanted to format it with a symbol or character, you can add as well. But this will write the job ID, then the part ID next to it on your label here. So that's the kind of thing you can do also by adding those text parameters to your label using the add text field. I don't know, of course, the add text is also something if you wanted to type any text like on the label. So if you want to add a field right here, it's of course just a simple text box as well you can use on your label here. Okay, so this is basically how you create a label using the label administrator in Cabvision. So now, once your label is created, so one thing you will want to make sure is in your machine catalog. So in the machine catalog, in the general machine, you make sure you select the actual machine you want to customize. So me, I will select my nesting machine. And in the output tab, in the drop-down list, you have a group called label. And in label, this is where you tell Cabvision what template to use for your actual label for this specific machine. And if you want to print label for offcut, you can even create another template just for your offcut. So in my case, I created a offcut label template called offcut 4x3. And if you just want to see what it looks like, in my design offcut 4x3. So it's more generic and more like basic, where you just write like to let the guy know this is an offcut, this is the size of the offcut, and this is the material for the offcut. That's pretty much kind of like basic information you want to note in an offcut, and then they just put it wherever they store their offcut here. So now, once you selected your label template and your offcut label template, for the label, the plus label you see here section is specifically for the label app. So this is for a label that you print on demand. So this is where you want to save those labels on your computer or on a shared drive. And make sure that if it's on a shared drive, the other computer in the shop have access to this folder to be able to open those labels once you send them to the shop. Then the label sort order. So you have multiple options to print the labels. So this is more like when you print them in batch for one sheet. So let's say you wanted to print all the label for one sheet. The most common one is standard optimized order, which means that it will print in the same order they are basically numbered. So if you're number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, it will print it in this order. Or some people like to follow a specific pattern. You can say, I want to print like a kind of like a bottom, a zigzag like this, because that's how the operator find it easier. So you can also print the label in this sequence as well. But me, I just leave it as you click on one part in the part number 1, 2, 3, it will print in the same order here. The next section, label image. This is for the real-time labeling. So basically, most of the time, this section will mostly be filled out by our technician during your integration, because we'll know what image type your onboard printer can read. This is basically controlled by the actual CNC machine software. So we'll basically match the output it can read. And the width and height, this is the image we'll create. So we'll create basically a image file, and you can decide to make it bigger or smaller. So depending on the resolution you want. So if you want to print a higher resolution of label, you can double, triple the pixel width or pixel height of your label. So if you found that it's quite too small or a little bit blurry, you can basically double those values, but make sure those pixel width and height are basically following the same ratio as the actual label. So 4x3 means this is a multiple of 4, and this is a multiple of 3 here. So that's just to follow the same ratio here. And there's some calculator online. You can type inch to pixel or pixel to inch in Google, and they will give you, for example, for 4-inch label, it will tell you what is the pixel count for 4 inches. And then sometimes I just double the value for each to make my image bigger and have a better quality. The image output folder is where you will output the labels for the CNC machine. So this is really something we'll control on the integration. Same if we want to print the offcut on the CNC, this will be done during the integration, and the label applicator will be basically matching the CNC machine you have to integrate. So if you have a SCM machine, we'll use one of the SCM label applicator. If it's a BSC, we'll use one of the BSC one. But most of this is kind of like already set up during the integration. So you really have to change this section right here. The only thing you may change is the template you want to use if you redesign your label or you want to test new style of labels. So this is how you link those labels to your different CNC machines. And now what we'll do, we'll go to the next step where we want to output the label. So if I click optimize and I output my job, so of course I don't have a CNC machine today to show you like the label being printed in front of you, but you will basically imagine that once we output the files, they will be sent directly to the machine. And most of the time it's as simple as outputting the code and load the CNC file, and the machine will automatically know where those labels are saved on your computer. So you don't really necessarily have to do anything else other than just output the CNC file, wait for the file to transfer, and now the operator can load the program and the label will be printed. But what we'll do is to use the label app to do on-demand labeling. So now this is where my optimization is done for my job. So when you click NC code and label, you want to send the file to the CNC machine. You'll notice when you have the label app, you have two sections, one called label and one called label image. And each of them could be turned on or turned off. So label is to send the image to the label app, so the on-demand standalone app where you print on demand. And the label image is to send the label to an automatic onboard printer on the CNC machine. So if your machine is capable of printing its own labels, you'll notice that on your computer, this option will likely be turned on. But if you just want to print on demand, you will just turn on this option and then use the label app in the shop. And what we'll do, we'll just use the label app today because this is what we can show easily on the screen. So let's click run. And now I will write my label, and this is the path where I will write the label. So just make sure you note and know where you output those. So because I already have this job name, I will just override it. Click OK. And now let's pretend you go to your shop. So I will minimize all this. And let's pretend in the shop you open your label app now. So I open it. So this is really like what you will find on the tablet or the computer in the shop. And what the operator will do first, so once it open it, it will simply go to open and select what job he wants to open. So this is where you will find in the shared drive all the job you sent to him. And you notice that the file name will match the job name you type in CAD-vision. So that's what he will use to know which job he has to open. So I select my job, I click open. And now the label app will load this job on the screen. And the layout will be similar to S2M. So you will see basically in the center your sheet layout. So where you can click on one part. And when you click on one part, you can even click on the printer icon on the left or on the right to print the label for this particular part here. You also have the option to click on the view button. So if you wanted to see the label just for this selected part right here. And the arrow will allow you to move. The first one in the middle is to go to the next or previous part, whereas the top arrow left and right is to move to the next or previous sheet here. And you can still go from one part to another one here. And if you wanted to see the label of one part, you click on the view and you can see now, as you notice, this is a part with downwards. So I see now my label will print my barcode from my downward machine and tell me that this barcode is the program for this edge and this barcode is the program for the opposite edge. And I like that we have a mirrored field also available for the edge barcode program, where you can kind of tell the guy this could be used for the other edge, basically the opposite edge. So this is nice. For example, instead of having to scan the part twice to drill it on the dowel machine, you just scan it once and you just flip the part over and then do the doweling on the other side. And you notice here, this is my bending symbol on my part right here. So this is the one I told you, you can control the size of the bending symbol in the label editor. So this is how you basically use the label app. One thing you can do also is you can move from one material to another one. If you get to the last material of one the last sheet of one material, you will automatically jump to the next one. So right now I can see, if I go back to my, you have the count of the sheet. So this is a 5 of 28. So if I go at the 28th sheets, next one will move to the maple melamine of my stack. And if I go back to this sheet. And also notice that my part has an offcut. So this big block here is likely an offcut. So when you click on the part, it will be identified as an offcut. And I can view, you remember I have a specific template to print my offcut label. So that's why it's handy to set up your offcut size and also set up your template for your offcut. So it's easier to identify versus like having the same template as a regular part in CAD-vision here. Also in the label app, this is how you can mark a job as completed. You remember I told you the guy in the shop can let them know when it's complete. So if this job is done, you can just check this, you mark it as completed, and then that will Most of the time, sometimes remove it from this computer and also change the status in the office. So here I will say no, I'll just keep it on my computer here. Laser is an option I saw probably twice in my life. Some shops, you could have a setup in some shop where you can put a laser, not a laser, projector on the ceiling and project basically the position of the label directly on the sheets. It's a clever thing where if you do it by hand, you kind of like project basically the position of each label. So the guy knows here this is the label number 5, 2, and so on and so on. So that's to turn on or turn off the information to send the label position to the projector here. One thing you want to do when you first start using the label app is just to go to the preferences. And this is also where you can change the view. So if you wanted to rotate the view in the app, so you can just click here. And the next time you will open the job, that will reload the job. And now that will rotate basically the sheets for you. Also, what I like is this is where you can select what you want to do when you select a part. So if you select a part, do you want to print? Actually, it's when you hit the print button, do you want to print just one label or do you want to print the entire sheet? You also have the option to print on select, on part select, which means that if you have a touchscreen, if you touch the part, that will directly print the label without having to hit the print button at all. Also, what you can do, you can, of course, show the offcut, which I did earlier, but you can also show the label position on the sheets, and you can show also the size of the part and the number, the part number as well. And you have the option to show the part size as cut versus sometime with banding or no edge banding. So depending what you prefer. So if I activate mine, every time you change an option, the software will reload the job. And now you can see now I have on the edge my width and my length. And in the bottom, this is my part number, 1A, 2A, and so on and so on. So this is the new label app with the new preferences that you can set up in the label app here. And this will basically be the interface that you will use in the shop to print the label on demand while we offload the part on the CNC machine right here. And so now this is the time if you have any question. So I will get back to Amanda, and if there's a question, feel free to type them in the chat, and I'll be happy to answer any question.
Thanks so much, Christopher. And we do have a lot of good questions for you. So I first just wanted to thank everyone in the chat for helping out with some troubleshooting issues that we had at the beginning of the webinar. Thanks, everyone. We're certainly going to adjust everything on our end that we can to provide you with a smoother experience in the future. So we may end up going a little bit over time here. So if there's anyone who needs to leave at 1 o'clock, we are going to keep recording this and try to get through as many questions as we can. If there's anything we miss, as I said earlier, we will reach out to you offline and make sure that we have your questions answered. So our first question is about on-demand labeling, Christopher. I'm just going to read it out here. We have a BSA beam saw and a BSA Rover Gold. In this case, our license is standalone as we have an office and factory at different locations. Should we purchase the software with 2 different server codes, i.e. one server code in office with core, cabinets, S2M, saw, and point-to-point, and then a different server code in factory with only label it? And can I install only label it on the screen touch system near the machine? Does this work, or would I want to buy 2 label it modules? Thank you for clarifying.
That's a good question. And so first, the Label It app will always need its own server code. So when you buy the label add-on, that will automatically allow you to have access to one label standalone app. Now, if you have, let's say, 4 different offloading table because you have 4 nesting machine and they will all need their own label app to print on demand. So you will need to buy multiple seats of plus label. Now, when it's a BIMSO or a nesting machine that can automatically print their own label, so let's say they don't need to be printed by hand with our label app, you just want Caption to create the image and send the file. Uh, as soon as you buy the Plus Label edition, any machine that is capable of automatically printing those labels will be basically something we can integrate with Cabvision. So you don't need to buy multiple Plus label if it's automatic labeling. But if it's on demand done by hand, because you have a new app you need to install on each computer to print those labels, then you have to account for one license for one workstation where you're planning to print the labels. I hope it makes sense. And if not, feel free to reach out to us and we can explain it to you for your specific case.
Thank you, Christopher. So our next guest, I think, was hoping we might have some insider information. He asks, are there any plans to make a refresh option to refresh your reports after you've added a sheet and moved parts to it?
That's a good question, and actually, I'm not sure if it's something they are working on already. What I will do is just check with the team. So we'll check with you if there's a project regarding this request, and if not, we'll invite you to log it. You can log it on the support, and as soon as you log it, we'll assign a project number, and then we can track it and see the status of this request.
Thank you. Our next question is, how do you add the asterisk or the star to the program name?
Oh, good question. So this is has to be done in the machine properties. So if I go back to my Cablevision and I return to my S1, so when you go in your machine catalog, so you select the machine output tab. Then if I'm not mistaken, you go to, so there's a field, actually, no, I'm lying. It's not for a point-to-point, for a nesting, it's a point-to-point. And the field will be under the secondary machine where you have a label format field. So basically the curly bracket PR is the automatic code to automatically write the program name. And then you can put any character before or after this. So if I put like 2 asterisks here, that will write basically 2 asterisks and then write my program name and add 2 asterisks at the end. So the idea here, you select the machine where you want to customize the barcode. And because it's a secondary machine, because you want a barcode for point-to-point or a dowel machine, so you just select the particular machine you want to change the barcode format. And then in the output field, you have a label format field where you can change this code here. And I invite you to go to the help file, because in the help file, there's even some documentation, just type label format, and you'll see that there's additional code you can add as well. Not only PR, you can put, like, for example, a job name, path, those kind of things as well to your barcode. But this is really where you want to change this right here. Okay.
Perfect, thank you. Our next question is it possible to have certain parts get separate labels on the same report? For example, an adjustable shelf might get a different information than a finished end.
Good question, and as of today, no, but that's a very good idea. I think if you use the report engine, like just to print those label in the office, you might be able to change the label template based on the part name or any thing you wanted. But in the label app, for now, the labels will all be the same for all the parts. That will be, again, maybe something to check on eSupport if it's already requested, and you can go on eSupport and just post the request and people can vote for it, and we can implement it if it's something that has a lot of like vote on it.
Perfect, thank you. Are you able to take a few more questions, Christopher?
Yeah, absolutely.
Perfect, thank you so much. Our next question, is there a way to add .dat text to the dowel barcodes? I have to add it manually on the doweler after scanning.
Okay, and this is the same as the previous answer when we ask how to add the asterisk. So on your Dower machine in the machine catalog, so mine is just called DND, go to the output tab, go under the label format field, and just type that DAT here. You might need the asterisk or not need it, so based on your machine, but this is where you will add your .dat, and that will automatically print the program name and add the .dat at the end of your barcode in the final barcode that will be printed by Cabnation.
Perfect, thank you. We have a guest who's asking about webcam integration. I know there's a little bit of overlap, so Christopher, I don't know if you want to talk a bit about that or if that's best perhaps taken offline after this webinar.
Yeah, I mean, I can talk to the best of my knowledge. I don't know everything about webcam, so if I don't know, I don't know, but I can try to answer it for sure.
Um, well, our guest didn't have a specific question. It was simply, what about webcam integration?
Oh, okay, okay. So yeah, it's better to take it offline, and we can specifically answer the question about webcam. Yeah.
Beautiful. And I invite everyone to just reply to one of my emails if you'd also like to hear about webcam labels and the integration with Cabinavision. Our next question is this labeling option available on Solid 10?
Yes, so it's just that the user interface is maybe not the same. It got refreshed last year, but the label solution is something that was already implemented many versions ago, like quite some times. The only thing is more depending on your license and the way you set up it, just to see if we can indeed implement it for your version 10 or not. But that would be more like with your sales representative, you will be able to check for your license. But for sure, it does exist for Cabvision 10.
Perfect, thank you. I'll try to read this next one correctly. Our guest asks, I can't read the 2D PDF 417 barcodes consistently. Is it because of the DPI on the printer 203 or because of too much data? I have like 60 to 100 words. It is linked to the job comments.
Okay. That's hard to answer, like, because if it's not consistent, it could be too much data. Because if it would be hard to read because of the DPI, it will likely be hard for most of the labels. So I would guess that maybe your 2D barcode is trying to hold too many characters. So just as an example, as a test, try to create like simple comments versus like more complex and like really long comment, and see if you see a pattern where it gets harder and harder. And if it is, maybe you can play with the DPI to see if it helps. But sometimes it's also just when you have so much data, you make it harder to basically capture anything in one single barcode.
Okay, thank you. Our next question is, can automatic labelers label only certain parts based on a filter, such as only labeling cabinet backs?
By default, not in Cabvision, like as an option that exists. We did create like some script for some customer. So it's more like custom development where we created some script to add or remove label for certain parts based on some criteria as you want. So I remember one I did recently that was more for a customer who does cabinets and a lot of doors, and he didn't want to print labels on his MDF because it's going to his finishing line. So he didn't want to have to manually remove the labels. So he just say, when it's this particular material, don't print the labels. So it's possible, but it would be like custom development, and you can reach out to us and we can look at how long it will take to implement this and how complex it will be.
Thank you. I don't know if this is going to be the same answer. Our next question is, can you have recuts use a different label so that operators know to expedite them?
By default, that will be the same labels unless it's on a different machines. Because the label is controlled for each machine, you have a specific template. So what you could do if you install a separate labeling station, you can just send a different template of label to this particular station when you output, or create a fake machine just called recut, and this machine will have basically a different label template selected in the machine catalog here. If we go back to the router right here, so you can create a default router and maybe a router dash recut, and now change this to use a different template so we know it's just for recuts, for example.
Perfect. Thank you. Sorry, I'm just reading through some very nice comments and thank yous. I think we're at the end of our questions now. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us, and thank you, Christopher.